Hi, Steve Harrison here, and I love bringing you interviews with authors who can make you more successful. And there are different ways where you can be more successful, but I've never met anybody who's really broken it down like Michael Ciarochi, author of The Physics of Success. Michael, welcome.
Thank you very much, Steve.
You know, I think a lot of times people think about success and becoming more successful. There are books that some people think might be fluffy or woo-woo or mystical, and you have like applied, physics to this whole idea of success.
Yeah, I think of myself more as the drill sergeant of motivational speakers.
I love that.
Not much fluff.
I love that. Well, and tell us about, like, how did this actually begin for you? It's not the ordinary person that has combined the study of physics with the study of success. How did that come about?
Well, my background is in engineering and technology. I've always had a fascination with physics, and I was taking some physics classes. Meantime, back in my personal life, I had come through sort of a bad time and realized that I needed to apply some of these success principles that I'd known about my whole life. But I hadn't quite figured out how they worked. I never did figure that out. And I was actually thinking about the physics one day and contemplating that. Physicists, if you talk to them, actually when they start talking, sound a lot like mystics. They talk about consciousness and things like that. And I was actually thinking about some of that stuff. And all of a sudden, I made the connection and started thinking about it because the concepts were so big. And so I started writing them down and eventually ended up with a book.
Wow, that's great. So what would you say the physics of success, what would you say your book is about?
Well, the success principles are, these are things that people can do, anybody can do, that will increase their chances of success at anything they want to achieve. And there's lots of books about it. And I've read a bunch of them, and they all have certain things in common. And those common things are what I would call my core success principles. And so I've outlined those in the book, and I spell them out, exactly what you need to do them in order to use them, and then how the physics itself, what's happening in your world when you do these things. So you're doing one thing over here, and then you have a result over there. They don't appear to be connected, but in fact they are.
Let me ask you this. What would you say for everybody that's watching right now, they have some area of their life where they want to experience more success. What would you say is one of your best tips that you share, where generally speaking, if people can do this one thing, they really greatly increase their odds of succeeding?
Yes, write it down. That is so important, and I think so many people skimp or cheat on that. But in reality, if people would just write down on a piece of paper and describe something that they really want, something they want to achieve, it would go a long ways to help getting them there.
Now, does it matter whether they type it or into a laptop or write it physically?
I've spent about the last year studying that.
Wow.
And I actually have some background in it. And I'm afraid that the bad news is a pen on a piece of paper seems to work the best. And I actually, and we're conducting this particular interview over a tablet, and I've got a pen over here by my side, and I can write on it just like a piece of paper, but it's just not the same. Once it goes into that black box, it sort of stays away. On the other hand, I reach down here and I can pick up my notebook, and all of my outlines, all of my plans, all of my goals are there, and I can easily digest them and remind myself of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and so when you, in taking that tip, for example, of writing it down, so what's the physics behind that? How does that relate to the physics of success?
Actually, that's almost physiological more than physics itself.
Okay.
But the interesting part about it, one of the fascinating things about our brains is that as humans, is that we have this cerebral cortex where we have this fantastic imagination. The problem is when we imagine the things where we have this creativity and imagination is not connected to anything that's related to memory, which is why when you wake up from a dream, you remember that you had the dream, but after a few minutes, you can't remember the dream. And, people tell you, if you want to remember your dream, write it down.
Right.
And that's really what we're talking about there, because what we're actually trying to do in the physics of success is talk to not our subconscious mind, but our conscious mind, so that this is in our memory and at our forefront. So it's in our thoughts all the time. And if we imagine something and we don't write it down, it's just like a dream. It sort of goes away.
So if somebody when they read your book, what is it that you want them to remember from the experience?
I would like for people to think about what they're doing, because so many people today just operate in what I call default operating mode. They just go from one thing to the next, almost taking the easiest path every time without actually making a decision on where they want to be at the end of the day or the end of the week or the end of the month. And if by reading The Physics of Success, you understand that your goal, what you want to achieve is actually a destination, and you have to think about that. So I think thinking about what they're doing is what I would like anybody to take away from this book.
And then how is the second edition? What's different in the second edition?
Yeah, I wrote the Physics of Success about 4 years ago. And in the last 4 years, there have been a lot of advances in physics, and not to mention myself, I've done well as in addition to that. But what's really interesting is in physics, some of the things where I was, I wasn't doing anything that nobody had thought of, but I was not in the mainstream of physics. But now you can watch public television and they'll talk about things that I talk about in my book, which is interesting because it's gratifying that, okay, now I'm kind of mainstream. And I was actually able to push the envelope a little bit further with regards to consciousness. And then also there's always the thing, any creative process, from music or writing a book or even landscaping your yard. After you get it done, you kind of look at it and you think, oh, I could have done that better. Yeah. So I think the second edition is going to be a lot better. So
let me kind of put you to the test here in a fun way.
Sure.
Let's say somebody wants to lose weight.
Yep.
How can physics, and especially your book, whether it's the theory of relativity or whatever physical principle or law, how does it relate to wanting to lose 20 pounds?
That's a great question. I've actually lost 45 pounds, so I know a lot about that particular subject. And I did it with help, and I don't think there's anything wrong with getting help. But it's really interesting because after I went through the process, I realized that the group that I went to was actually applying the success principles I was talking about in the book. So what you're doing is actually, in a sense, visualizing a journey. In other words, in physics, we're all, I guess the moral of the physics of success is that literally, not just figuratively, life is a journey. So your goal is your destination. If the goal is to lose 20 pounds, the idea is that that's where you want to be in the universe, is where you're a person who's 20 pounds lighter. And you're going to make many decisions along the way, just like you're on a road trip, whether you turn left or right, go, fast or slow, to go in a certain direction. And that's where the physics of success is going to be. It's like the first step. In other words, you have to know where you want to go, where you want to be in order to get there. Now, of course, there are other things involved, like not eating a bunch of junk food involved with losing weight. Sure. But that's also, again, visualizing and putting down on paper, this 20-pound lighter person is a different person than you are now. So what's that person like? And you start describing that person, you start to become that person. And, so you pass up the pizza, you pass up the pasta. And I'm an Italian guy, right? And when I'm passing up pizza and pasta, that's a big change. Yep.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, this has been wonderful. Anything here that you want to add?
Well, I'd love for people to go out to thephysicsofsuccess.com, spell it all the way out, The Physics of Success, THEPHYSICSOF success.com. And I have a lot of interesting articles out there. You can sign up for periodic updates. For instance, when the book comes out, I can let you know when that's going to happen, and see some audio and some video clips out there as well.
Wonderful. Well, Michael, thanks for all that you're doing to help people be more successful, and good luck with the book. I really wish you the best with everything.
Thank you very much, Steve.